Minnesota has a new state flag, and the new flag of the erstwhile lily-whitest state in America looks suspiciously like the flags of Somalia. Here is Democrat Governor Tim Walz announcing the change. Okay,
all right,
Governor
ready.
sits down.
Whoa, wait a minute.
Not wearing a tie, very sloppy looking. He moves the state flag out of frame, leaves the American flag for now, and then he puts this new state flag in. It's a star.
There, that's better.
It's a star on a kind of a blue standard with comes to an angle there, and then another lighter blue color on the right side of the flag. I've got here in my hand some flags of Somalia, of the nation of Somalia, and then also of individual states. So we've got the flag of Galmudug. Looks suspiciously. It's not a perfect. It's not a 1-to-1, but it's pretty close. We've got the regular flag of Somalia. It doesn't have the triangle, but we got the same kind of blue, and then the star. Then we've got this one, the flag of Hirshabelle, which is a federal member state in south central Somalia. That also it's kind of reversed, so the triangle's on the left side, but very very similar looking. Then we've got the flag of Ras Kaysar state in Somalia. That one, I think some earlier designs of the Minnesota state flag looked a little more like these, and then they rejected some. But the final product, it's just weird. It's just weird how similar the new Minnesota state flag looks to flags of Somalia. Now, assuming this was not all just an improbable stroke of luck, that the new Minnesota flag looks more than a touch Somalian, the change stands to reason. There are officially upwards of 87,000 Somalis living in Minnesota, virtually all of them in Minneapolis. The real number is actually higher, as some 94,000 Minnesota residents are reported to speak Somali as their primary language at home. Presumably, that number does not reflect 7,000 culturally inquisitive Scandinavians who just decided to pick up an East African tongue for fun one day. So we're talking about upwards of 100,000 people. Who knows, maybe more. Now, the entire population of Minneapolis-St. Paul is only 425,000 people. Almost 1 in 4 Minneapolis residents are Somali. And 1 in 3 American Somalis live in Minnesota. That is the political reality. And since flags are symbols of polities, the new flag reflects that changed reality. Many white liberals encouraged the change, in part because the old Minnesota flag was deemed politically incorrect. I have it right here. The old flag, you see, it depicted both Native American Indians and the white settlers who displaced them. The new flag erases both the Indians and the whites in favor of an abstract symbol representing the new settlers who are now displacing the old new stock of Minnesota. The symbol is once again reflecting the new reality. But while the old flag at least paid some honor to the heritage of the land as it changed, the new flag does no such courtesy. When the liberals call to abolish whiteness, they mean it. If you thought the old form of settler colonialism was harsh, just wait until you see the full scope of the new one. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. Welcome back to the show. The walls are closing in. They've got him now. Breaking, bombshell. Trump is done. Whatever. I'm sure there are many other sayings that we're all supposed to say every single day when the liberals pretend like now Trump is totally over. So today's version of the walls are closing in, they've got him now, bombshell, is that Trump's former lawyer and fixer, Michael Cohen, testified at the New York trial, and he brought an audio tape, a secret recording of Donald Trump. We'll get to that breaking, shocking, walls are closing in news in just a moment. First, though, I am being very publicly recorded right now. And on that recording, I want to talk to you about Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Knowles. As you plan your summer travel, make sure your wireless provider has you covered at home and abroad. Pure Talk is now providing international roaming to over 50 countries. Pure Talk already puts you on America's most dependable 5G network, but now they're offering coverage in over 50 countries as well. Enjoy the freedom of unlimited talk, text, and ample 5G data for just $20 a month with Pure Talk. This is a deal that's hard to beat, costing you less than half of what you'd pay with other networks. Not only is their U.S. customer service team ready to assist you with a seamless switch, but they also have fantastic savings on the latest iPhones and Androids. Are you ready to make a smart switch? Well, join my cell phone company. Not a company that I own, but I have the phone and I have the service, Pure Talk. Start saving today. Visit puretalk.com/Knowles, K-N-O-W-L-E-S, to explore their offers. When you make the switch, you'll enjoy an additional 50% off your first month. Do not miss out on the opportunity to save on wireless at home and abroad. Visit puretalk.com/Knowles, K-N-O-W-L-E-S, puretalk.com/Knowles today. Speaking of the old colonialism and modern bigotries, we go just a little bit south, or rather just a little bit north of Minnesota to America's evil top hat. We turn up to Canada, which has now concluded a lot of its investigation into a story that popped up in 2021. And the story was that Catholics in Canada had been butchering Native Canadian children, Indigenous First Nation children. These Catholics brought these Indians to the residential schools in Canada and slaughtered them. And there were mass graves. This was the story that was reported 3 years ago. 215 children's graves at the Kamloops Residential School. First Nations up in arms. And what happened as a result of that allegation? Between June and July of that year, 68 Canadian churches were desecrated, vandalized, or destroyed. 25 churches were burned down. Many more have been destroyed since then. That was just in a 2-month period. Many more have been destroyed since then. In order to get to the truth, Canada has spent almost $8 million, $7.9 million to investigate the mass graves of these little poor Indian children at the residential schools, and they haven't found a single body. Not one body has turned up. No remains have been found. The whole story was totally fake news, as many of us knew at the time. When I first heard this story, that the Catholic Church had been secretly slaughtering Indian children in Canada at their schools, I thought, nah, I don't think that happened. There will be an investigation, and the investigation will take 3 years, and then it'll turn up that didn't really happen. But in the meantime, the libs will have gotten what they wanted, which is that they burned down a lot of churches, they vandalized more churches, including in America, too. There were American churches that were vandalized and attacked because of this story out of Canada. It's a reminder that a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth has time to put its pants on. So how did this happen? The way that this happened is that the liberals in Canada and in America started with the conclusion. This is not a case of you start with a bad hypothesis, with bad information, and then you do a lot of bad stuff based on the bad information, and then whoopsie-daisy, you realize you were wrong and you have regret. That's not what happened here. That's not how the liberals operate. They started with the conclusion. The conclusion was the churches have to be burned down. That was the starting point. Churches are bad. They're patriarchal. They're oppressive. They're a symbol of the white man. They're a symbol of Western civilization. The church has got to go. They restrict our freedom, man, to do all sorts of weird stuff that's detrimental to our lives. Well, the church has got to go. How are the churches going to go? Well, we're going to concoct a bunch of evidence. We're going to try to find any even slight sliver of a possibility that the church really is oppressive and terrible and violent and patriarchal and blah, blah, blah. And then we're going to form the thesis that the churches killed all these Indian kids. But they're only doing that because they already started with the first part, which is we're going to burn down the churches. The libs have been doing this in the West for a very long time. At least since the French Revolution, probably long before that. That's how it works. So is there going to be any hand-wringing over this? Is there going to be any regretful apology from Justin Trudeau or any of the other libs in Canada who stoked the flames of this dishonest fire? No. They'll just move on. They got what they want. Yeah, okay, whatever. Well, yeah, we haven't found a body. Maybe one will turn up later. Anyway, on to the next destructive op. Speaking of death, I've got the dumbest headline of the day. I adore this headline. This is from, I don't even know the news source because Professor Jacob gave me a beautifully, properly printed version, so I don't see the URL. No, here it is. It's from The Independent. Headline: Conservative plan calls for Trump to kill everyone on federal death row in second term. Conservative plan. Donald Trump, if he gets elected, he's going to kill everyone. Well, hold on. Conservative plan calls for Trump to kill everyone on federal death row. So another way of saying that is conservatives want to follow the law in Trump's second term. Shadowy conservative groups want the president to do his job and follow the laws that have been enacted by the representatives of the American people in accord with the U.S. Constitution. What's the alternative to that? I guess the other way you write this headline is Democrats want Biden to break the law and Trump to break the law and everyone to break the law. They're on death row. These guys have been convicted of capital offenses. I didn't make those laws. I didn't make the laws. I didn't commit the crimes. I didn't try the criminals. But I'm a citizen of the United States. And I have this crazy idea that we ought to enforce the laws because we're supposed to be a nation of laws, not a nation of men. Isn't that what the liberals always talk about? We're a sacred democracy. We're a nation of laws, not the passions and the interests of a single demagogue. Well, okay. Trump wants to follow the law. Well, not those laws. We don't like those laws. This is really what the election's about. This is a perfect encapsulation of the election. You got one guy, Donald Trump, who wants to return to the way that we used to do things, which is we would follow the law and just behave normally. That is to say, in accordance with norms and standards and customs, the old American way of life. And then you got the real demagogue. And the real demagogue, oddly enough, is Joe Biden. I know the guy seems like he's half dead and he doesn't know his own name most of the time and you can barely understand him when he speaks. But he is acting like a demagogue in the sense that he disregards the laws. He disregards our laws with regard to immigration. He disregards our laws and our customs with regard to certainly the sexual laws, right? Can men go into women's bathrooms? Should we be able to castrate children? He's imposing new federal mandates arbitrarily with the stroke of his pen using executive orders on that front. He is behaving in the way that they accuse Trump of behaving. As is often the case, the Democrat accusations are confessions. Now, speaking of great men, you ought to check out John Paul the Great Catholic University. Go to jpcatholic.edu/Knowles. Lib-controlled universities and entertainment establishments are two of the biggest battlegrounds for the health and sanity of our culture. John Paul the Great Catholic University in Escondido, California, offers a non-woke alternative. JP Catholic gives creative conservatives hands-on training in their craft alongside a robust liberal arts education. JP Catholic offers programs in film production, animation, screenwriting, music design, and even video games, forming the next generation of creative professionals who will bring truth, beauty, and goodness to the entertainment industry. If you are not looking for a degree but want to sharpen your skills, JP Catholic also offers free online courses. Right now, JP Catholic is offering our listeners a full application fee waiver at jpcatholic.edu/Knowles. Applications are still open for this fall with generous scholarships available. Pursue excellence in your creative craft without sacrificing your values. jpcatholic.edu/Knowles, KNWLES, jpcatholic.edu/Knowles, KNOWLES. Speaking of the law, you remember when RFK Jr., just a couple of days ago, came out and he said that he supports all the way up until the moment of birth, even of an otherwise healthy, full-term baby.
So in other words, keeping it as is with Roe versus Wade having been overturned and leaving it up to the states to determine if and when a woman can have
No, I wouldn't leave it to the states.
You wouldn't, right?
No, I would.
You would say completely. It's up to the
my
woman.
belief is we should leave it to the woman. We shouldn't have government involved,
even if it's full term.
Even if it's full term.
Okay.
Okay, full term. Great interview there. Okay, now he's walking that back. This did not go very well for him. So Kennedy, I'm not going to read the whole thing because look at this. He writes like, an epic poem about his stupid view on it. Says, it has been a notoriously divisive issue in America, but actually I see an emerging consensus. It should be legal up to a certain number of weeks and restricted thereafter. Even in the reddest of states, voters reject total bans. And on the other end, almost no one supports gruesome third trimester except to save the life of the mother. Well, hold on, you did. Hold on, wait. That thing that you're just calling gruesome, you just said you support it up until the moment of birth. So he says, I'm a medical freedom advocate, bodily autonomy, women's maternal instincts. Women should make their own decisions. I had been assuming that virtually all late-term were such cases of a threat to the life of the mother. But I've learned that my assumption was wrong. Well, hold on. He could have said that. He could have said, well, in the case where the baby poses a threat to the life of the mother, which is it's already legal to have in those cases, then I would support it. But otherwise, no, I don't support. That's not what he said. He said, no, I support period, full stop. In the cases of purely elective late-term are very upsetting. Once the baby is viable outside the womb, it should have rights and it deserves society's protection. I want to put a pause here. Why is viability the standard? Once the baby is viable outside the womb, why is that moment the moment when the baby has a right not to be murdered? Why not why not just pick the second trimester or the third trimester? Why not just pick quickening, the moment when a baby's movement can be detected in the womb? Why not pick a heartbeat? Why not pick? They're all arbitrary. If you pick any moment other than when the baby first comes into existence, that is the moment of conception, then it's all just arbitrary. We can see when a life begins. Okay, that is not an arbitrary moment. When you go from a thing not existing to a thing existing, that's not arbitrary. Right? But when you go from a thing existing, but he's only got 4 fingers instead of 5, or a thing existing, but you can't quite detect his heartbeat, or a thing existing, but now he starts to move around a little bit. Now we're talking about pretty arbitrary points in the timeline. If the question is when does a human being get rights? And it's not just me saying this. It's not just the conservatives saying this. Justice Blackmun, who is a super lib Supreme Court justice who wrote the decision in Roe v. Wade, he admitted this in writing to other judges on the court when they were deciding Roe v. Wade, because some judges wanted to institute the trimester system, which prevailed in Roe v. Wade, to say, okay, during this trimester is okay, during that trimester, maybe it's not okay. And then later on, they threw out the trimester system in Planned Parenthood v. Casey, even though they upheld the upshot of Roe v. Wade, which is that moms can kill their kids. They changed the reasoning for it, and they implemented this viability standard. But Blackmun said, even at the time, he said, yeah, viability, trimester, whatever, it's all just arbitrary. We're just trying to come up with an incoherent consensus. Kennedy goes on. I learned this because I was willing to listen. I support the emerging consensus that should be restricted up until a certain point. I believe the point is when the baby, or should be unrestricted up until a certain point. And that point should be when the baby is viable outside the womb. Therefore, I would allow appropriate restrictions on in the final months of pregnancy, just as Roe v. Wade did. Okay, blah, blah, blah. He goes on and on and on. So there it is. Kennedy could explain his view on in just a handful of words. I support Roe v. Wade. There you go, 5 words. I support Roe v. Wade. He supports Roe v. Wade, which is Exhibit 752, that no serious conservative can vote for this man. It's not. Democrats can vote for him. Frankly, I'm not even all that upset that this is Kennedy's view. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is not going to be the president of the United States. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in this race stands to do one thing, and that is to take away votes from Joe Biden. Could he pry a few votes from Trump? Maybe he could, but he will. I've said this from the beginning. He will take more votes from Biden than from Trump. And this makes that even clearer. Robert F. Kennedy supports Roe v. Wade at the federal level. This is the most leftist mainstream view on. I get that Kennedy was right about COVID because he hates vaccines and he's been talking about how terrible vaccines are for many decades. He was right about COVID. He's wrong about pretty much everything else. And he continues to articulate that, even as he walks back his extreme position of, kill the baby up until 2 seconds before he's born. What's his moderate position? His moderate position is, I support Roe v. Wade. Actually, I want to go further. I want to make Roe v. Wade into a law. Give me a break. This is it. Any conservative who suggests that it is in any way acceptable to vote for this man is reminding us why conservatives always lose. Because the radical far left position of 10, 20, 30 years ago becomes the mainstream center-right reasonable conservative position today. Pathetic. No thanks, not going to work. I'm very glad that Kennedy was right about COVID. He's wrong about everything else. Now, being right about COVID might matter because, new headline out, the libs might be prepared to do COVID again. There is a new highly transmissible variant. What does it mean? We'll get to it in a second. First, though, speaking of medical doctors, I sat down with Dr. Robert Epstein, the former editor-in-chief of Psychology Today, to discuss how big tech companies can control the outcomes of elections and even the beliefs of people all over the world. If you were not notified that we released the episode this past weekend, I'm not surprised because certain big tech platforms are censoring the episode. Perhaps you can guess which ones. After watching the episode, I think you'll probably get it. Check out the teaser.
We published a landmark study in which we show bias in Google search results can change people's views about anything at all.
How bad is it?
I gave a briefing, a private briefing. A few minutes later, one of them walked out. I know exactly who it was, and he walked up to me and said, Dr. Epstein, based on what you just told us, I predict you're going to be killed in some sort of accident in the next few months. But a few months later, my beautiful, amazing wife was killed in a horrendous car accident.
Are you deterred at all?
Yes. Then there's another part of me, which is the science guy. Every single thing we do is relevant to everything that's happening right now.
Right.
With the algorithms shifting the views of people who are undecided on some issue or other around the world by the billions.
Now what?
We are fucked, okay?
The full episode is available now on the Michael Knowles Show YouTube channel, also on Spotify and X. Subscribe to all of those and watch the ad-free version and unedited version, especially if you go check out DW Plus and X and Spotify. Maybe one of them doesn't quite make the cut of that. On DailyWire Plus. Head on over there right now. Speaking of COVID, new highly transmissible COVID-19 variant. It's called Flirt. That's right. The new, subtler, suaver, sexier version of COVID, Flirt. Could this lead to a summer uptick? Asks the Los Angeles Times. Here we go again. Seems to me I've heard that song before. So the question on everybody's mind, are the libs going to shut the world down with COVID again? Are the libs once again going to use COVID to shut down at least our country and then change all the election rules and rig the election for Joe Biden again? Are they going to do that? They're going to try. I don't think that the libs are sitting in lib headquarters, mwahaha, laughing, cackling about how this is what we're going to do, and mwahaha, they'll have to stand 6 feet away and mail in all their votes and we can steal it again. Mwahaha. That's not exactly what's going on, but it's not totally far off. The libs are doing everything they can to rig the election against Trump. A better way to think about it than, the libs releasing some pathogen is that the libs are throwing spaghetti at the wall. We know, because COVID exists, it's now a virus, we know that there are going to be mutations and there are going to be upticks and it's going to be like the flu. So the libs can, out of convenience, put a bigger focus on a virus surge than other virus surges. They can exploit pre-existing phenomena. They can even encourage phenomena. But what I don't think COVID is plan A for the libs. I think the libs are going to try to jail. I think first they're going to try to kick him off the ballot. That failed. Then they're going to try to jail Donald Trump. That might work. They're going to try to bankrupt Donald Trump. That's what they're doing right now. They're going to try to encourage more widespread mail-in votes. They're going to try to get illegal aliens to vote. They're going to try to do this, that, and the other thing. And maybe the combination of all of those efforts, maybe one will take off more than another, but at the very least, they hope the combination of all of those efforts will make it such that Joe Biden, even as a cadaver, is able to beat Donald Trump, who is still pulling tens and tens of thousands of people when he speaks. It could happen. It could happen. It's not that they're going to do the COVID card again. It would be a little bit on the nose. They just want the option. And they want the option of mass violence in the streets. They're not going to do BLM again. They're going to do the campus intifada. Now, the campus intifada is worse for them because the Israel-Gaza issue is a wedge. So the libs like the street violence, the feeling of chaos, tends to occur in and around election years. How convenient for the libs. And there's a little unrest. And they can use that chaos for political opportunity. But in the case of BLM, which galvanized public opinion for typically leftist causes, the campus intifada is a little bit worse because the protesters largely blame Joe Biden for the war in Gaza. Now, perhaps what the libs are hoping for is Trump is the pro-Israel candidate. Biden is significantly less pro-Israel in his policies. So maybe, as it all shakes out, ginning up this anti-Israel sentiment will help the Democrats. At the very least, it'll create another feeling of chaos and uncertainty, which the libs usually use to their advantage. Maybe. But this one seems to be boomeranging back on the libs, so much so that they're actually fearing for their own convention, which we'll get to in just a moment. So what is plan A? Before we get ahead of ourselves, what is plan A for the election? Plan A is still to jail Trump. And the way they're trying to jail Trump is with these 4 cases. Unfortunately, though, the New York one is really their main shot before the election. The New York case where they're going to jail Trump for allegedly giving hush money to Stormy Daniels, which is really just an in-kind contribution to his own campaign, which is not illegal, but he might have mishandled some paperwork about it. So that could be a crime. And even though it's not a New York crime, so we don't really know why New York is prosecuting this, it's a federal crime, and it is a crime, so maybe they could get him on it. And how are they going to get him? They're going to get his old lawyer and former fixer, Michael Cohen, to testify. And that was the bombshell, walls closing in testimony yesterday. So what was the surprise? Michael Cohen secretly recorded Donald Trump talking about the hush money payments. Boom, got him, right? Not really, because even this, the key to the whole New York case against Trump is old news, because we already knew that this audio existed. In fact, journalists have already heard the audio. CNN obtained this audio 6 years ago. 2018, CNN got this audio. This is old news. So what is in it? In it, according to transcripts of the recording, Cohen says to Trump, I need to open up a company for the transfer of all that info regarding our friend David. Now, presumably, David refers to David Pecker, who was the head of American Media, which publishes the National Enquirer. National Enquirer was going to be used to squash some of these stories. Financing then comes up in the conversation. Trump asks Cohen, what financing? Cohen says to Trump, we'll have to pay. Presumably, we're going to have to pay to squash these stories. And Trump is heard saying, maybe pay with cash. But it's unclear. Even the liberal journos are admitting the audio is a little bit muddled, and it's unclear whether he suggests paying with cash or not paying. So it's the few words you get there, pay with cash, it's totally unclear from the audio, even in the understanding of the liberals, what those words mean. Then Cohen says, no. And no one even knows, even if he is talking about making a payment, is he talking about paying in cash, like, a briefcase full of greenbacks? Or is he talking about paying in cash, meaning we're not going to finance this, we're not going to drag this out, we're going to pay it up all at once? And then the tape cuts out at the end. So despite what the headlines say, what information is actually conveyed in the tape? The information that's conveyed in the tape is that Trump and his lawyer talk about paying someone named David, let's even say it's David Pecker from the Inquirer, paying him some money through a corporation, right? The opening of it is, I need to open up a company. So obviously we're not talking about briefcases full of cash here. And then what? And then it all kind of cuts out. That's it. That's the upshot. And it comes from a tape that we have known about, that liberal journalists have had for 6 years. Maybe I'm being too rosy here. I don't feel the walls closing in. Maybe I'm being a little too optimistic. I don't think they've got him now. I think this is weak stuff from a witness who has real credibility problems. In part because he's a rat. He says, years ago, he said, I'm so loyal, I'll go down with the ship, I'll die before I turn on Donald Trump. And then, he's a rat. They squeeze him and he's a total rat. But even so, he's a rat, right? So he has a credibility problem. And that's why the people around him were all testifying that the guy's not credible and not trustworthy. That's why he brought this audio, but the audio just doesn't do it. They didn't really get him. So then Mr. Rat decides on the stand to invoke President Trump's wife. And Trump probably wanted to stand up there, smack him in the face and say, get my wife's name out your mouth. But he didn't do that. We'll get to what Michael Cohen says about Melania in just a second. First, though, when you want to testify to me on this show, and when you want to ask me a question in the mailbag, here's what you got to do. You got to go to DailyWire. You click on the watch page, you click on my show page, and then you click submit a mailbag question. That's going to open up an email. And then all you have to do is record your mailbag question. You do voice memos on your phone or however you want to record it. You record it. Keep it to a minute, please, so I can play it on the show. Even under a minute is better. And then you just attach that file to the email, boom, send it in, and I get to hear your mellifluous, beautiful, dulcet tones on Friday and give you an answer to your question. The other testimony from Cohen that's being reported is that Cohen says that after the Access Hollywood tape came out, remember Donald Trump, he's joking with Billy Bush and he says, when you're famous, women, they throw themselves at you. You can do whatever you want. You can grab them by a certain part of their anatomy. And this was the big October surprise. This was how they were going to destroy the Trump campaign. And it didn't really work because it was a little vulgar. And obviously, Trump is just caught there on a mic. He thinks he's just, joking around with Billy Bush. And they said, this is Donald Trump promoting or something, which obviously he wasn't, because the key words in even this very vulgar language is they let you do it. When you're a celebrity, they let you do it. In other words, he's saying women throw themselves at wealthy, famous celebrities, which is just true. Okay. I lived in LA for 7 years. I've been around show business for a while. It's just true. I'm not saying it's a good thing. It's actually kind of a bad thing, but it's how human nature works. It is true. When you're rich and you're famous and you're a celebrity, women throw themselves at you. That's true. I've known enough real celebrities to have seen this sort of thing happen. And so Trump's just joking about this with Billy Bush, and that was the big October surprise. So the defense of that became that this was just locker room talk, which it was. It was locker room talk. Again, it's not a defense of locker room talk. Locker room talk can be very naughty and downright sinful, but that's what it was. Michael Cohen alleges on the stand that the person who came up with the locker room talk defense was President Trump's wife, Melania, which is just so beautiful. Apparently, Trump shook his head no when Cohen said this in court. So I don't know, maybe Trump's saying no, it wasn't her who came up with it. But if it was, it gives me even more respect for Melania, because Melania Trump, she's graceful, she's beautiful, and she's kind of no nonsense, right? We've got some pretty frivolous first ladies and political spouses in our American political system. They're not so frivolous in Slovenia. Okay, they're not. This is a no-nonsense woman. She speaks a number of languages. She's apparently a practicing Catholic. And she knows how to separate reality from nonsense. And so this attack on her husband that he made some joke, with Billy Bush off camera, accidentally on camera because it was a hot mic. If it was Melania who came up with the locker room talk defense, it would further bolster my idea, my gut feeling that normal people, Melania Trump, she's not a political wife in the sense that she didn't go to Georgetown School of Foreign Service. She's not one of these Beltway apparatchiks. She was a model who married this very successful man. And then later on, this successful man got into politics. So she finds herself, a little bit fish out of water in politics. In that way, she's really kind of a normal person, and normal people know exactly what that is. The Beltway people can rend their garments, gnash their teeth, clutch their pearls. Can you imagine that Donald Trump made this bawdy joke with a guy when he thought he wasn't being recorded? Yeah, normal people can imagine that because that's how normal people often behave. Yeah. Give me a break. That's the best they got. Michael Cohen set up a company to transfer money from President Trump to a media organization, maybe, and Melania Trump, just knocked my cigar case down. Melania Trump is normal and has normal faculties of perception shared by a lot of people. Okay. Yeah. If anything, I think that would probably help Trump if that turned out to be true. Because there's not a lot of political correctness in Slovenia, and most people are sick of political correctness. We now call it wokeness. The Democrats are going to need to do better if they want this man to wear an orange jumpsuit. Ladies and gentlemen, if you missed Sunday night's series premiere of the Daily Wire's first ever full-length animated sitcom, Mr. Birchum, there is no need to panic. Episodes 1 and 2 are now available on demand, streaming exclusively on Daily Wire Plus. Let me introduce you to Mr. Birchum. He's the no-nonsense junior high woodshop teacher struggling to navigate a world he doesn't understand or approve of, constantly clashing with his gamer son, snowflake students, and most notably, the school's spirited Jedi officer, Mr. Carponzi. The Jedi stands for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, in case you were wondering. Or as Adam Carolla, the creator and voice of Mr. Birchum, puts it, he's an old school guy living in a new school world. Joining Adam Carolla are stars such as Megyn Kelly, Roseanne Barr, Jay Moore, Tyler Fisher, Brett Cooper, Danny Trejo, and many more. I repeat, episodes 1 and 2 are streaming now, with new episodes released every Sunday exclusively on Daily Wire Plus. Don't miss out on the laughter, the lessons, and of course the lumber. Plus, for a limited time, get 25% off all Daily Wire Plus annual memberships with the code BIRCHUM25 at checkout at dailywireplus.com. My favorite comment yesterday is from Kevin MCD112, who says, I don't understand why Michael has a problem with Joe Biden shaking hands with one of his voters. You make a great point. When Biden turned to no one and shook hands with what seemed to be a ghost, I perhaps unfairly thought that Biden was just losing his mind. But no, you're right. There might have been a ghost there. And if it was a ghost, then we know that that person is going to vote for Biden. So you're right. He's just serving his constituency. Speaking of the election, Nancy Pelosi, former Speaker of the House, just traveled over to the Oxford Union to have a debate with Winston Marshall, the banjo player from Mumford & Sons, over the 2016 election. That sounds like I just read some kind of Mad Lib from you. I guess Nancy Pelosi is a Mad Lib, but it sounds like I just filled in the blanks. It's very unusual, and yet it happened, and Winston Marshall performed marvelously.
Before COVID, intelligence services colluded with big tech to have Trump suspended off Twitter. Yes, the same platform which hosted the Taliban and Ayatollah deaf to Israel Khomeini. They thought the president crossed the line when he tweeted on Jan 6th, quote, remain peaceful, no violence, respect the law and our great men and women in blue. That's a quote. You may be thinking now that Trump is a populist. You are right. He didn't accept the 2020 elections, and he should have. So should Hillary in 2016, so should Brussels, and so should Westminster in 2016, and so too should Congresswoman Pelosi, instead of saying the 2016 election was, quote, hijacked. Quote, hijacked.
It was, she says. It was.
means that we don't accept the results of it.
Okay. So she says she's not really following Robert's Rules of Order here. She's calling out from the bench. She says it was hijacked. That doesn't mean that we don't accept the results of it. The banjo player from Mumford & Sons completely destroys Nancy Pelosi with facts and logic and actually allows her to undermine her own position. Love it. Mumford & Sons has some pretty conservative songs. My son, my eldest son, he's really into Mumford & Sons. He sings that song, I Will Wait For You, all the time, mostly just the chorus all the time. And you think of the song The Cave. The Cave is based on Plato, and it's very conservative. I love that I think it's the final stanza. He says, I need freedom now. I need to know how to live my life as it's meant to be. That's the conservative understanding of freedom, not the liberal understanding of freedom. So sing your siren song and something all you want. I don't know. I forget the lyrics. But anyway, they're extremely conservative, and it's all about Plato. So I'm not surprised that he's giving this really great conservative speech here. But notice how she undermines her position. She goes, it was hijacked, but that doesn't mean we don't accept the results of the election. That's precisely the Donald Trump position on 2020. It's not even slightly off from Trump's position. Trump says the 2020 election was hijacked. It was rigged. And then he accepted the results of the election. He challenged it through as many legal mechanisms as he could. The legal system failed. And then he accepted the results of the election and moved out. When they talk about Donald Trump, the worst insurrectionist ever, January 6th, the worst day in the history of this or any republic, Donald Trump did, and nothing different than the Democrats did, and he continues to hold views that are no different than the views of the leading Democrats vis-a-vis the legitimacy of the elections. There is no difference whatsoever. There is a big difference in how those views are portrayed in the media. But what Winston Marshall did here was get Pelosi to admit, yeah, I hold exactly the same view as Trump. But it's okay when I do it because I'm a big lib. Now, speaking of San Francisco residents, such as Nancy Pelosi, a San Francisco teacher has just come out on camera and said that the state of Israel has no right to exist. This is the kind of thing you would expect from the liberal teachers. And also, I guess you might expect this too, that the United States has no right to exist.
I believe Israel has no right to exist. I believe the United States has no right to exist. I believe every settler colony who has committed genocide against native peoples, against indigenous people, has no right to exist. I believe in a free Palestine, from the river to the sea. I believe one day Palestine will be free. Is this news to anybody? White supremacy destroys for the sake of destruction. Abolition destroys for the sake of creation. We are not the same. I have an unwavering respect for children.
Okay. All right. I think I got enough of her platitudes. So, yeah, she's admitting I want to destroy stuff, but it's okay when I do it. And the reason is that Israel has no right to exist and America has no right to exist. So Israel has no right to exist. Why? Because they took the land from the Arabs in 1948. I think today is the anniversary of, it's some Israeli anniversary, maybe the anniversary of the establishment of the State of Israel or something like that. Professor Jacob was telling me in the makeup room. So because the Israelis took the land from the Arabs, Israel doesn't have a right to exist. My question for this teacher and for all of the pro-Palestine activists out there, when did the Arabs get the land? When and how did the Arabs get to the Levant? Because the word Arab refers to Arabia, which is a different place than the Levant. So when and how did that happen? I'll answer it for you. It happened in the 7th century after Muhammad founded Islam. And then Muslims very, very quickly conquered a lot of lands. And in fact, within a century of the founding of Islam, or just about a century within the founding of Islam, the Muslims made it all the way to Tours, Poitiers, 150 miles outside of Paris, and almost conquered Europe, though happily they were unsuccessful because Charles Martel, the grandfather of Charlemagne, beat them back. But that's how they conquered it. Okay, so if your argument is the Jews don't have a right to the state of Israel because they conquered it from the Arabs, well, how did the Arabs get it? They conquered it too. Same thing here, why she brings up the United States. America doesn't have a right to exist. Why not? Well, because we took the land from the Native Americans. Okay, well, where did they get the land from? This is the subject of my PragerU video that came out about a month ago. Where'd they get the land from? Where did the Lakota Sioux get the Black Hills from? They conquered it. They took it from the Cheyenne and the Kiowa and all sorts of other Native Americans. And we used to recognize something, which is the law and right of conquest. You take the land, well, there you go. You establish a polity based on the degree to which you have the political and military ability to defend that polity. I'm not saying there isn't such a thing as natural law and even international law, but I'm not saying there isn't such a thing as just war, justice in going to war and justice in conducting war. All of those things are very real and knowable through reason. And also, there is such a thing as the law of conquest. That's how it works. It's amazing. I'm not surprised to see the left-wingers take the side of, Arab liberation or something, but it is kind of funny to see the conservatives do it. It's sometimes, and it's only very fringe right-wingers who do it. But I don't know if you guys are history buffs or anything. There was this time at the very peak of Western civilization when Christendom sent soldiers to the Holy Land to take the land from the Muslims. Okay, I'm not defending it. Well, I am defending it actually, but I'm not calling for a new crusade or anything like that. I'm just pointing out, the peak of Western civilization, where we get so much of our political and civilizational identity, was when we sent Christians to take this land from the Arabs. And now we're told that the great conservative cause and the great cause of morality is to restore this land to the Arabs. Seems a little bit weird to me, and no surprise that the same arguments that you're hearing from these lesbian communists with crazy colored hair on the college campuses with regard to the state of Israel are the arguments being used against the United States as well. Today is Tuesday. The rest of the show continues now. You don't want to miss it. Become a member and use code Knowles, KNWLES, at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans.